The next section of the tour, Swinegate, begins here. Turn left into Swinegate and listen to some of the memories from the people who used to live here. Joan Sadler once lived in the area. She describes the shops that were located down this road.
I was born on January the 12th, 1922, one of twins, at 23 Swinegate, when Swinegate was a very, very built-up area and lots of people lived everywhere. Little Back Swinegate, Little Stonegate, Coffee Yard, Grey Plain, everybody lived on there. And people who had businesses in that area always lived over the shop. Me and Kilvingtons always lived over the shop, and Scott the butchers, they always lived over the shop. There was a shop next door in Petergate to Scott's that sold nothing else but tripe, Hubner's tripe shop. Miss Calvert had a sort of a general shop, and at the corner of Grey Plain, Mr. Poole had a shoe repairing shop. And I think there were 2 bookies and the pub. Can't remember any of the shops.
But going back to Swinegate, we had one little shop called Miss Calvert's. She sold everything, you know, from shoelaces to fresh eggs, I think. You know, but you didn't buy in bulk. And she had a book for them that got things on tick, you know, to go in. In fact, I can tell you a tale about that. They kept going in and saying, they'd ask for what they were going, give you an example, 3 eggs, and give a name, say Mrs. Brown or Mrs. Scott or whatever, and she put it down in the book. Well, I was that curious. I went and did it again, and I give my mother's name. Oh, I don't have to get a good ad in for that.
In the late 1980s, Swinegate was completely redeveloped. The buildings between Grape Lane and Swinegate are all new. York Archaeological Trust carried out a huge excavation on the site from 1989 to 90, on the Grape Lane, Little Stonegate and Back Swinegate street frontages, uncovering material from Roman times, including parts of the legionary fortress. Between Swinegate and Petergate was part of the medieval cemetery of St Benet's Church, which became redundant in the 14th century and was excavated by York Archaeological Trust. Nearly 100 inhumations were removed, many within oak coffins. The lid of one was decorated with an incised 9 men's Morris board. One amazing find was a set of 8 14th century wax tablets, the smallest and finest such set to survive in Europe. Wrapped in a leather cover and the size of a matchbox, they measured some 30mm by 50mm. The leather wrapper was decorated with a tooled design of oak leaves. The texts include a legal document and some accounts, and a poem, one phrase of which has been interpreted as, "She still did not answer me, but she still didn't say no." Or, as Ella Fitzgerald might have put it, "She didn't say yes, she didn't say no." Walk straight ahead along Swinegate, crossing Back Swinegate, and you'll come to Oscar's Wine Bar and the Biltmore Grill. This is the site of the York Central Mission Hall, which still bears this name carved in stone above the doors. The building became an Elim Pentecostal church in York in the 1930s. David and Dorothy Watson here describe German prisoners of war going to the church, as well as open-air services, terraced houses, and vegetables on streets, because of a fruit seller who had his business here.
I remember during the war that, particularly on a Sunday afternoon, there used to be a lot of German prisoners of war come into the building, and there was a Bible class run, a men's Bible class run. I think it was especially for them. We had a great host of them. For a young boy, seeing the German prisoners of war, it was quite interesting. I wasn't frightened in any way, but it was interesting to see them. There was certainly no animosity. In fact, one of our ladies married a prisoner of war back in the 50s and probably the late 40s. We used to have the big open air meetings.
But the shops that were there were quite derelict really, and you know, tatty. And as I say, all the warehouses with this greengrocery and you know, some bits of vegetables all over the street. It was messy, very messy.
One well-known name associated with this area is Dame Judy Dench. Her father was Reginald Dench, who was a doctor who treated the father of Mrs. Sheila Creamer for TB, after the Elim Church, which was located here, had prayed for him all night.
My father had a marvellous miracle. When I was about 3 or 4, he had TB, tuberculosis, and he hemorrhaged, and his lungs collapsed, and he was taken into hospital to die. And then the church met together at an all-night prayer meeting and prayed for him, and he prayed himself. And the next day he was fully recovered. We walked out of the hospital with 2 perfect lungs. Dr. Dench, Judy Dench's father, was his doctor at the time, and he used to visit then using his bicycle, and whenever he passed us in the street, he would shout, "Miracle Man, Father." Yeah. Wow. And after that he passed A1 and went into the Navy.
Turn round to Back Swinegate and walk along it. The next section of the podcast begins here.